So let's talk about the human body. What if I told you that one of the oldest medical traditions in the world didn't see the body as this fixed, stable thing, but as something that's defined by the fact that it's constantly, well, falling apart? We're about to look at a totally fascinating and probably pretty surprising view of anatomy. And it all starts with the meaning of a single word. Okay, so the key to this whole way of thinking is right there in the language. In Sanskrit, the word for body is sharir. And get this, its root, shri, literally means to decay. The ancient texts straight up define the body as that which is in a constant state of decay. Think about it, metabolism, aging, all of it. So right from the get-go, we're talking about an anatomy that's built on a philosophy of change and impermanence. So if the body is always in flux, how in the world did they manage to map it? I mean, long before X-rays or MRIs, these ancient scholars had some really clever systems for understanding the body's structure. What's really cool is seeing how the two giants of Ayurveda, Charaka and Sushruta, broke the body down. They both agreed there were 6 main parts, but they grouped them just a little differently. See, Charaka counted the arms and legs individually. Sushruta, on the other hand, just lumped them together as the 4 extremities. Both make perfect sense, right? It's just 2 different ways of looking at the exact same form. But it didn't stop there. Sushruta, who was this incredible early surgeon, also had an even more detailed 8-part model. He took the trunk and split it into 3 distinct zones: the chest, the abdomen, and the pelvis. This adds a whole new layer of detail, and you can bet that was super useful when it came to things like diagnosis or, actually performing surgery. And then there's an even more fundamental way they saw the body, which is actually pretty intuitive. They divided it into the central core, or majesta, that's your head and your trunk, and then everything else, the prantia, which are basically the limbs that branch off. It's a really simple but powerful way to think about our core versus our extensions. Okay, so this brings up a huge question. Why? Why was it so important for these ancient doctors to have such a detailed map of the body? Was this just, academic curiosity? Oh, definitely not. This quote right here from the ancient texts basically says the chapter related to the body is sharir. This shows us that the study of the body was a formal, foundational part of their medicine. It wasn't just a side note. Entire chapters were dedicated to it. It was the absolute basis for everything else. And here's the real takeaway. This wasn't just theory for them. This detailed knowledge was the bedrock of all practical medicine. You couldn't understand how the body was supposed to work or figure out what was wrong with it if you didn't understand its structure first. And for someone like the surgeon Susruta, this knowledge was absolutely non-negotiable for performing what they called shalyakarma, or surgery. All right, now we get to what is, for me, the most amazing part of this whole story. Without any modern tools, how did they get this first-hand knowledge of what was inside the body? Well, their method was nothing short of genius, and it's completely different from what we do today. Sushruta's method for studying a cadaver actually worked with nature instead of fighting it. They would carefully wrap the body, place it in a cage, and submerge it in a slow-moving river for about a week. This process would naturally soften all the tissues. Then, the physician could take the body out and very carefully scrape away the decomposed layers one by one to see everything underneath, from skin to muscle all the way down to the bone. Having such a close-up understanding of the body led them to some really interesting ideas, maybe even early thoughts about organ transplantation. They actually developed a kind of timetable for how long they thought certain organs stayed viable after death. Now, of course, these times are very different from what we know today, but just the fact that they were thinking about this gives us this incredible window into their post-mortem physiological ideas. So, this ancient, nature-driven approach to anatomy is just a world away from how we do things today. Let's really bridge that gap in time and just see how different these two approaches really are. I mean, look at this. On one side, you have a process that relies on nature, on time, and the gentle currents of a river. On the other side, you have a precise chemical formula. The goal of the ancient method was to watch the body deconstruct itself. The goal of the modern method is to stop that process dead in its tracks. Today, it's all about chemistry. The preservation process involves injecting a chemical cocktail, usually through a major artery. And the star of the show is formaldehyde, which basically just hits a giant pause button on decay, letting us study the body for a long, long time. It's a total shift from an anatomy of decay to an anatomy of preservation. And all of this leaves us with one last thing to think about. We live in an age of MRIs and CT scans where we can see inside a living body without making a single cut. But is there still something we can learn from a worldview that fully embraced the body's impermanence, and a science that found such an ingenious way to learn from nature itself? It's a fascinating question that really connects our high-tech present with a deep past.